of you to please be seated. We will start with the sessions and the announcements in another 5 minutes. We are waiting for some guests. They are here any moment. They shall be here any moment. Just give us 5 more minutes. We can start then. Good morning, everyone. We are happy to welcome you all for the T20 G20 workshop in hybrid mode on challenges and opportunities of sustainable energy transition being organized by Integrated Research and Action for Development. The workshop is a part of Task Force 4 Refueling Growth, Clean Energy and Green Transition side event of Think Tank as an official G20 engagement group, which serves as an idea bank for the G20 by bringing together think tanks and high-level experts to discuss relevant international socio-economic issues. T20 recommendations are synthesized into policy briefs and presented to G20 working groups, ministerial meetings, and leaders summit to help the G20 deliver concrete policy measures. Today's workshop is conceived as a platform to bring together and engage think tanks, government officials, and international experts. The workshop will discuss and deliberate on the key challenges and opportunities for sustainable energy transition and the required strategies and policies for just transition. I would like to share a brief snapshot of the workshop schedule with you all. The inaugural session is from 11 a.m. to 12 noon. Then we have a session on country experiences and sustainable energy transition from 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m., followed by lunch from 1:30 p.m. to 2:15 p.m. We have a session on policy suggestions to G20 between 2:15 and 3:45 p.m. And the valedictory session shall be of 15 minutes from 3:45 p.m. to 4 p.m. So without delaying it any further, may I request all the guests to come on the dais for the inaugural session. I would like to invite Mr. Tarun Kapoor, Advisor to PM, PMO, Office Government of India. See here? He's not coming. So we'll just wait for 5-10 minutes and then we can start with the inaugural session. And the guests and the dignitaries who are there with us virtually, please check that they are available with us. Anshuman?
Hey, hey,
So,
hey, hey, hey. Check, check.
so without delaying it any further, let's start with our inaugural session. I would like to invite Mr. Tarun Kapoor, Advisor to PM, PMO Office, Government of India on the dais. Please welcome with a round of applause. Next, we have Mr. Augustano, Country Director, World Bank India. So please welcome. Professor Jyoti Parekh, Executive Director, IRADE. Ma'am, please come on the dais. Dr. Kirat Parekh, Chairman, IRADE. So please come on the dais and take your seats. Dr. Jeffrey D. Sachs, Director, Center for Sustainable Development, Earth Institute, Columbia University, is here with us virtually. Now request Professor Jyoti Parekh to please conduct the session. And virtually.
We have, I'm sorry to say that the Honorable Minister for Power could not come. He has regretted only last night at 10 o'clock. And so we would have to continue without him. Can we have a little problem of the time. Dr. Jeffrey Sachs from Columbia University says he has to be there at 10:20. Anyway, then let me just.
I can
stay till 12. Huh? You can stay till 12. That's good to know. Okay. So then I will start. Shri Tarun Kapoor, advisor to the Prime Minister in the Prime Minister's office, Mr. Auguste Decaume, the country director, World Bank, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, Columbia University, Dr. Kirit Parikh, Chairman IRADE, Honorable Embassy and High Commission representatives from many G20 countries here in the audience, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, and also nearly 300 people who have joined us virtually. Welcome to all. On behalf of IRADE and myself, I welcome you and thank you also through this T20 workshop for G20 on the 75th anniversary of India's independence. And also it is in IRADE, Integrated Research and Action for Development. It's our 20th anniversary, and we are gathered here to discuss sustainable energy transition. Now that's a word, everyday word nowadays. It's, climate change, renewable energy, it's transition. But it is worthwhile to remember that it is neither the first energy transition, nor would it be the last. In the 19th century, the first energy transition took us from fuel wood and solid biomass to the first solid fuel coal. Together with steam engines and turbines, coal captured the power and railway sector. In the 20th century came the liquid and gaseous fuels, oil and gas, again, together with internal combustion engines and other innovations. They capture the power, industries, transport, services, and many other sectors. They occupied almost 2/3 of the total energy by the mid-70s. They rule till today, replacing coal in several sectors, such as railways and power. Yes, there is a steadfast support from the hydropower, but only where and when suitable locations and water are available. In between came high hopes from nuclear power, liquid biofuels, and so on. However, they could not capture a large share as expected at the global level. They do continue to play an important role for some countries. All through this period, energy efficiency had increased and continues to do so. In the 21st century, we have pinned our hopes on the unlimited nature-based energy sources, solar, wind, hydro, biomass, etc. We hope to switch from depending on stocks of energy to natural flows of energy. They are guaranteed to be there for decades and centuries with no price attached and more equitably available to most countries. Along with this transition, the demand side would have to also shift, as we have seen that as with every energy source, new innovations have to come on the demand side as well. And we have to shift to electric vehicles, electric cooking, large industries would have to change and so on. However, we already realize their limitations. They are intermittent, their availability is unpredictable, their paucity of rare materials that go into harnessing them, and there is also environmental impact on birds, environment, and all these are not yet fully understood. Moreover, due to climate change, their unpredictability will be even more. Their viability on a large scale is yet to be assessed. It is already clear that small and large scale storage solutions will be necessary. Even the impact of large scale fossil fuels was obvious only 7-8 decades later. One after another, every technology obvious only when it acquires certain scale, whether fossil or renewables. So, and nuclear, now we have to be ready with more technologies, and we are looking at new solutions, nuclear, hydrogen, fusion, and satellite-based power and so on. So these are all resource-related, technological, but they are also huge societal and environmental challenges and impacts, and society has to struggle along. Thus, energy transition has been a perpetual struggle. Transition is the only constant here. However, what lasted more than a century earlier may take 5 to 8 decades and may soon be even less. We are therefore keeping all our options open and for new technology in the horizon. We need to recognize the importance of the lifestyle-related changes and energy efficiency or negawatts, which may be based on not only technology, but lifestyles, collective cooperative solutions. They are needed at the personal, societal, national, and global level. All of us have to look into how we use energy, how society uses energy, how our countries use energy. Though currently we must focus on energy-related issues of the transition from the fossil fuel today, we need to think also the entire supply chains involving oil wells, oil ships, ports, refineries, pipelines, tankers. And when you come to coal, it's coal mines, coal transport, coal power, gas supply chain, and so on. There is so much revenue here. Taxes, investments, incomes from these three sources is a huge part of our economy. So we are talking about massive economic transitions about which we have not yet even begun to grapple. For example, Indian Railways move 700 million tons of coal, and the freight revenues with their heavy taxes help subsidize passenger transport. So how will we do that? We need to look at the entire supply chain from exploration of fossil fuels to mining, processing, transporting, and finally disposal. Moreover, they concern the, let's say, talk about the end uses, the boilers, turbines, diesel vehicles, oil rig business, less railway wagons, less tracks, less everything that we are using now, and its production. They all have to think about what to do next. That means we could go on down to less iron, steel, cement, construction, etc. Thus, financial, economic, and social issues would be enormous. But we have one possibility that renewables have low gestation period, and they have they are modular, so easy to even dismantle and take somewhere else. To sum up, such an upheaval requires that we, the G20 countries, join hands together and find cooperative solutions, not only for us, but also for others. Out of 20 G20 countries, 7 are countries from G77, which are developing countries. There are still many persons witnessing only the first kind of transition, that is clean fuels for cooking. Nearly 2.3 billion have not even enjoyed kind of lifestyle we have, and they've not even enjoyed LPG. On the other hand, with the rest of the society in these very countries elsewhere are looking to leapfrog to the second transition. Emerging economies will need technology, finance, and capacity building, and they are rightly raising equity issues, pointing out that not only their low per capita energy consumption, but low share in cumulated emissions that are historically accumulated. The need for finance, technology, and capacity building is enormous. Despite the equity concerns, there is a general consensus in all countries that the transition is needed, definitely needed, and due to national and impose national and global risks. In fact, India, China, and EU countries have agreed to the net zero emission goal for varying years from 2040 to 2070. India has promised to reach non-fossil power capacity share to 50% by 2030. These are substantive, measurable, and verifiable NDC targets. Such a decarbonization goal in the early stages of development will ensure much less cumulated emissions from India's future pathways, though emission growth in the very near future is unavoidable. As even bigger promise of meeting SDG to its own people has to still be done first. Today, a rich diversity of speakers are with us. They are highly experienced people from all walks of energy sectors who have been pushing the transition boundaries. They include government representatives, think tanks, and universities, international bodies like World Bank, United Nations, IRADE, and others, participation of nearly 100 in the audience and several hundred who joined virtually. Welcome again, and thank you very much for being here. Now, can we request Jeffrey Sachs from Columbia University to come on the screen, please? Thank you.
Greetings. Can you see me? Hello?
Yes, Mr. Sachs, we can see you.
Great. Shall I begin then?
Yes, please.
Great. Well, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure and honor to be with this G20, T20, IRADE, a great forum, and honor to be with this G20, T20, IRADE, a great forum, honor to be with. And if I could ask you to turn your microphone off, then I won't get an echo and you won't hear an echo. So thank you very much for the chance to share a few words with you. So thank you. I'm in Athens today, as you can see, in transit, but still I hope that our technology holds up. Let me say a few words about the energy transformation. It is a fundamental transformation that is needed all over the world. We're shifting the core of the energy system from a fossil fuel-based energy system to a zero carbon energy system or very low carbon energy system. And the aim and need is to do this by mid-century. So this is not a task for one or two countries. This is a global need, given the very dire and accelerating human-induced climate change. And there is no part of the world more vulnerable to this than India, so no part of the world that should be pushing for rapid transformation worldwide than India. Now, the question is how to do this. And we have not succeeded worldwide in achieving this for many reasons, partly political economy. Who's going to take the first steps? Who bears the costs? The lobbies of the incumbent fossil fuel producers and so forth. But I think that even a bigger challenge than political economy is the complexity of making this transformation in real time in the context of the need and desire for ongoing rapid development in today's developing world. So this is a very complex task because it goes to all sectors of the economy and it requires deep technological transformation. I believe market forces alone are gravely insufficient for this challenge. They can't get organized around the right trajectories. The investments that are needed, since many of the investments are public sector rather than private sector. There's considerable amount of research and development and local adaptation needed. So the transformation is too complex to think that market forces or even market forces aided by a carbon tax or a permit system is going to be sufficient. My starting point, therefore, is that countries and regions need plans. And to formulate the plans, these are more than the short-term nationally determined contributions reported to the COP meetings under the Paris Agreement. These need to be 30-year plans of transformation. They need to be plans up to mid-century at the minimum. And by plan, I mean a detailed technological and policy pathway, a design of how to make this transformation. Now, the contents of the transformation are actually fairly well understood at this point. At the core is zero carbon power, electrification with zero carbon electricity, whether from renewables or from nuclear or from carbon capture and storage, or from hydropower or other means. But zero carbon power is at the core of the transformation. Then is electrification of transport, electrification of cooking and heating in the colder climates, and electrification of parts of industry, even parts of metallurgy, for example. For the parts that cannot be electrified, the zero carbon power will be used to produce green hydrogen or other synthetic fuels as the base of the non-electrified energy using sectors of the economy. So this general trajectory is now well understood in the course of hundreds of analyses, all pointing in the same direction. But the specificities depend on local context. How much sunshine, how much wind, how much hydro, how much capacity for carbon capture and storage, whether or not nuclear, and so forth. I believe that every country needs to have a 25 or 30-year pathway. I don't know what India's is. I don't even know what Europe's is, because though Europe has a Green Deal, it does not have a clear pathway to achieve the targets of the Green Deal. So this is my starting point, and my recommendations is that we know what we're talking about. Once there is a technological pathway at depth, then one can make a policy pathway, because part of that technological pathway is public investment. For instance, the core infrastructure is going to be designed in different ways because it is a zero carbon infrastructure. There's got to be charging stations, for example, fit for electric vehicles. The cities have to be reconfigured for electrification, also for buildings and new building codes and so forth. So there's a lot of public investment that will be at the core of implementation. There's also, of course, a lot of private investment, independent power producers, to name just one, or the automotive companies, or the 5G telecoms providers that will be integrated with this new zero carbon technology, or the hydrogen producers are presumably going to be private sector actors. So a plan of action is based on a pathway combined with a policy framework that clearly identifies the respective responsibilities, the investment responsibilities, and the policy framework to push the transformation that is needed. Lots of other details are important. Training and capacitation, local adaptation of technologies, and so on. The next step that I think is crucial is what is the industrial supply side of this transformation. I presume India is going to be building its own solar modules. This seems quite clear. India is going to be producing its own wind turbines. India is going to be building its hydropower dams, and so forth. That is a supply side that means the industrial sector will play a major role. And we all know the importance of strategic minerals in the battery supply chain, for example, of the electric vehicle industry. This is now also part of the industrial policy strategy of countries. Two more elements in my mind are absolutely central. Finance is probably the core limiting factor now, even in getting governments to do the homework of long-term transformation, because governments say, well, who's going to pay for all of this? The developing countries, by and large, do not have the credit ratings and the credit worthiness to finance this privately. Much of this financing needs to be official development financing. But we know the tragedy, almost the farce, of the rich countries wringing their hands that in 14 years of promises and basically lies, they can't even get $100 billion together, where they can do that at the snap of a finger if it's a war in which they spend trillions, or COVID in which they spent trillions. But for all of this transformation, the rich countries have basically faked it. And it's disgusting, actually, since the rich countries also bear the historical responsibility for the climate change that's underway. As a practical matter on finance, the most important things that we need are first a massive expansion of the multilateral development banking system. And that means a lot more paid in capital for the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the Asia Infrastructure Bank, the new Development Bank of the BRICS, the African Development Bank, and others. This is the number one obvious agenda. And the country standing in the way of that is the United States, because the US Congress doesn't want to vote a capital increase. So it's blocking progress from all the rest of the world that is on side for this. Let's get this accomplished finally and tell the United States government, you did the most of the emissions, richest country in the world, you play your share, and let them take that back to the Congress, because this is an intolerable situation right now where one major country is blocking progress by all the rest. The second thing that will be needed is co-financing by large private or quasi-private or sovereign wealth funds. There's trillions of dollars available, as we know. It doesn't reach developing country projects. It will come as co-financing with the multilateral development banks. So this financing issue is central. It is, to my mind, the number one agenda for the G20 is scaling up the MDB financing and not taking the nonsense of we're evolving the institutions that the US has put forward, because evolving is just fine, but what it really means is delaying tactics to getting the capital is needed. The final point that I want to make is that transformation requires regional integration. Every part of the world, even India, needs to integrate its energy systems, its power grid with the neighbors. The United States with Canada and Mexico, the ASEAN countries, obviously linking Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, and so forth. The Northeast Asian countries, China, Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, integrated with ASEAN through submarine cables. The African Union becoming an integrated power system in Africa. We need the regional scale for efficient deployment of renewable energy systems, because these systems can only be resilient and at low cost, if they are geographically dispersed and interconnected. So this is my final point. Strategy, plans, pathway analysis, financing, and regional integration. And I'll just close by saying that the G20 is absolutely crucial in getting this agenda properly underway, finally, because it is the place where the financing breakthroughs need to be made. I could not be more excited by India's presidency, because India has been saying the things I'm saying for years and years, and it's time to get it done. And I believe that this will happen in Delhi in September. Thank you so much for letting me join you today for these brief remarks.
Thank you. We are very happy that you could join us and share your thoughts with us. Thank you very much.
Most grateful. Thank you.
Okay. Now I request Mr. August Ekam to speak on a country director, World Bank, about share his thoughts.
Here. Is this on? Okay, great. Thank you very much, Dr. Jyoti Parikh. Mr. Tarun Kapoor, advisor to the Prime Minister. Professor Sachs, thanks for your impassionate call for greater capital for multilateral development banks. Dr. Kirit Paparik, members of the G20 working group on energy transition. It is really an honor to be here today to share with you the World Bank's perspective on this very important topic that the G20 presidency has taken on. Before sharing with you my remarks, I really would like to congratulate the government of India on the very successful G20 presidency. You know, Professor Sachs said we'll see more results in September at the summit, but we are seeing impact already of the India G20 presidency. We're seeing that India is putting squarely the development agenda on the G20 agenda. We're seeing that India is broadening the voices of the G20 to the global south. These are very important achievements, and I personally think that these achievements could not be produced by any other G20 member than India, because of the importance of India in the global economy, now the 5th largest economy in the world. Also the fact that India is connected to all the voices that count in the global economy, and India is seen as a friendly voice. India also cares a lot about development in the global south. So would like to thank India for that. And this is important because the topic we're discussing today is a topic that cannot be addressed only from the perspective of developed countries. In fact, it can be addressed only with a strong voice from the global south. We know that the previous energy boom was to power industrialization in advanced economies. The kind of energy transition we're talking about is really to power development in the developing world, is to bring the developing world to the level of development of developing countries. This is what the new energy transition is really on about. That's why we care so much about it in the World Bank, because it matters for our member countries who are borrowing from the World Bank for their development. The transition to low carbon energy is also a priority for the global community, because it will help us live on a better livable planet. It will make our environment safer. It will make our air cleaner. So it's an agenda for all of us. We know that developing countries have low level of energy consumption per capita. To give you an example, India's energy consumption per capita is 1/3 of the global average. We also know that developing countries are growing fast. They're growing faster than developed countries. And as they grow, their energy consumption is going to grow naturally. And as the energy consumption grows, if the energy mix doesn't get changed, we will not be able to bend the global emission curve. So developing countries also have a big responsibility in ensuring that we bring the world to where we would like the world to be and achieve the Paris goals of keeping global warming to below 1.5. I'll come later on and talk a bit about how this transition should be, how we can make it just for developing countries. But it's important to recognize that developing countries also have a responsibility, because we want growth to happen, and we want growth to happen in a way that is less energy or carbon intensive than it has been for developed countries and for developing countries in the past. There are several sectors that need to be transformed. Mr. Sachs mentioned all of them, I believe, so I will not repeat them. But those sectors that need to be transformed are very important for development, for growth in developing countries. The agriculture is one of them, and we mentioned already urban transport and industry and energy. The good news, though, is that electricity prices have come down significantly for new technologies, and developing countries can invest more heavily into those technologies. They're becoming cheaper, and I would like to pause here to, again, congratulate India on the big progress made on solar, for example, on the heavy investment that India has made in solar industry, and that have also helped bring down the cost of solar. Similar progress can be expected in other sectors. But for us to really reach the global goal, we need to all accept the fact that renewable energies are going to be disruptive, and we need to be prepared for it. We need to embrace them. They're going to be disruptive because they're going to displace our traditional ways of producing wealth. And they're also going to require a lot of investment. Even though we have achieved a lot, the future suggests that we need a lot more capital, a lot more investment, and Professor Sack referred to them. And we know that concessional financing from institutions like the World Bank will help, but it will only be marginal. It will not be the biggest source of funding for the transition. The biggest source of fundings are going to be twofold. One is government funds, public resources, and two is private. Public resources are going to play a big role if they are directed to the right investment and create the right incentives and create platforms for private sector. But the biggest source of funding is going to be the private sector. Therefore, the private sector needs to see that investing in the transition is worth their while and can generate profit for them. Private sector doesn't go where they don't see profit. So our common responsibility as institutions interested in policies is to help ensure that when policies are designed by government and when government expenditures are being planned, they create context and conditions for the private sector to come in and come in big. In this sense, we're seeing a lot of progress already under the G20, and this particular working group has done a lot, and we'll see more results going forward. Under this working group, and we're very proud as an institution to be part of the G20 working group on the transition, we have collaborated in 3 priority areas. We have presented the role of 4 low carbon technologies, green hydrogen, offshore wind, battery storage, and carbon capture and storage in reaching net zero pathways in India as well as in other countries. Second, we have disseminated global best practices on just cold transition, highlighting the underlying principles and institutional governance to put in place to mitigate the environmental and social impacts, and options for repurposing coal infrastructure and land for alternative economic activities in coal-dependent countries. And third, we have identified the potential of greater role to be played by regional power grid integration and deeper connectivity between countries to support the energy grid in a way that creates opportunities for mixing new and traditional sources so that the energy grid can have a greater composition of green electrons, as we call them. So in line with this, the work stream of this working group, and thank you very much for the ideas that you shared in the working group with my colleagues, which have also helped inspire how we support India and the South Asia region. In line with these ideas, we have put in place at the World Bank a program to support energy transition in the South Asia region with 5 pillars. The first pillar is we are focusing on supporting core energy transitions. Under this pillar, we are mainstreaming least cost renewable energy sources such as solar and onshore wind. At the same time, we are working to accelerate the deployment of newer technologies such as offshore wind, battery storage, and green hydrogen. And we're also strengthening regional interconnections to make energy accessible to all. Under the second pillar, we're promoting supply side efficiency. We are encouraging reforms in the distribution sector, and we're helping countries to upgrade their power grid Under the third pillar, we are improving demand-side efficiency by encouraging market-based approaches and by increasing the capacity of consumers to provide bankable projects. Under the fourth pillar, we are prioritizing the decarbonization of the industrial and transport sectors. And under the fifth pillar, we're supporting just coal transition, as I mentioned earlier. Through the experience of implementation of those five pillars, we have gained credibility, perhaps, and we also gained experience internally to support more countries. Let me provide two examples of what we've done in India very briefly that can help inform how we support other countries. First, our board of executive directors approved a 1.5 billion development policy loan called Low Carbon Energy Development Policy Operation to support the ambitious reforms that India is putting in place for renewable energy, scaling up for green hydrogen, and for boosting climate finance or energy green finance, including from the private sector. And we really commend India on setting the way. I remember sitting, attending our board meeting on this operation where executive directors praised, and it doesn't happen very often, they praised the bank management for doing something innovative, and they praised India for showing how this can be done to inspire other countries, because India is doing it in a big way, in a very ambitious way, and we all need we need big ambitions for the energy transition to happen. The second example I wanted to share with you is that we've been working with India to leverage private sector financing in investment in rooftop solar. You know the example of REWAV, where, in the case of the World Bank, with a $100 million financing to invest in common infrastructures, we were able to help India attract 4.2 billion in private investment in solar. And I'm proud to say that the Delhi Metro is powered by solar energy produced from this investment. So I wanted to conclude by sharing with you a few thoughts. They're a bit personal, but they're also not disconnected from the work I do, which is at the World Bank. First, we want to make the energy transition smooth. We want to make it smooth for various stakeholders. And to make it smooth, I'll conclude. To make it smooth, we need to ensure that the traditional energy sector is not left out, because you cannot have green electrons in your grid if you don't reform distribution companies or the existing grid. Second, we want to ensure that the traditional sector is not unduly competing with the new energy, with new sources. Therefore, we need to think about distortive incentives in the traditional energy sectors. And third, we need to make sure that developing countries that need energy to support their development are also well supported during the transition. And therefore, we need to think about the notion of transition fuel. What can they use in the existing mix to transition to new mix whilst also supporting the development process. Fourth, we need to ensure that the lobby of countries that are heavily dependent on export of traditional fuel and fossil fuels is not preventing the world toward the transition. And Professor Sachs mentioned that a bit. We need to ensure that there is a global alliance to fend off potential lobbies from traditional sectors. Finally, I wanted to say that the energy transition, for us, for me, what just energy transition means is, first, it needs to have four pillars. First, it needs to be job creating for people. Therefore, new activities need to create jobs. Second, it needs to be opportunity creating for communities and firms. Third, it needs to be growth creating and growth enhancing for countries. And fourth, it needs to be trade enhancing and stability generating for the world. Thank you very much.
Now, I request Mr. Tarun Kapoor, Advisor to PM, Prime Minister's Office, Government of India.
Good morning to all the participants, and thank you, IRADE, for organizing this and inviting me here. Energy transition is probably one of the most important subjects being discussed in the world today, and also in India. So while most discussions on energy transition are focused on climate and climate-related issues, but I just add two more to that. One is energy security and also affordability. So energy transition, we at least countries like India, we are looking at energy transition from the environment point of view. That is probably number one. But then recently what we've seen is that energy security has also become very important. And immediately after COVID, the way the price of natural gas shot up, or even crude shot up, affordability also becomes a very major question. And for the developed world, the issues are a little different, because it was so surprising that countries in Europe could still keep buying natural gas even though the price shot up to over $50 from just around $6 to $7. But then countries like India, there is a limit beyond which then probably people or even countries or even large organizations may not be able to buy energy. So considering all that, we have to look at sustainable energy sources, but those sources should be such that someone else is not controlling them and has this discretion to suddenly create artificial deficiencies and push up the prices. So now, just looking at India, where we stand, our per capita energy consumption is amongst the lowest in the world. So we all know that energy consumption for the country is going to keep going up, at least for the next 15-20 years. In the developed world, almost they've reached a level where they don't need more energy. It's just that they have to shift from fossil fuel to cleaner forms. But in our case, we need more and more energy. So this more energy has to come from some source which should be sustainable, reliable, and if possible, available within the country, so that our dependence, long-term dependence, is not there. So now, just a few statistics. Very recently, Power Ministry brought out some very good statistics. The Power Secretary who was there is sitting here, and I'm quoting mostly from this publication which they brought out just a few days back. So and with this publication, they've also probably improved the data which we were always quoting, because they've got this data firsthand. They've collected it quite well. So on imports, now the surprising thing is that even 25% of our coal is imported. We thought that we have enough coal resources. We do have enough coal resources, but then certain types of coal, coke and all, which industry needs, we are not producing in India. Plus even power sector, there have been shortages, so we've been importing. So while on crude, we all know that 85%, more than 85% is imported, but even coal, about 25% is imported. That's quite surprising. Natural gas, more than 50%. We are importing. And but the good thing is that even in energy terms, in the grid at least now, including large hydro, we are around 24% energy coming from renewables plus large hydro. So that's something good which has happened. But then grid contributes only about 18% of the total energy which we consume in the country. So just greening the grid is not going to help. A shift from molecule to electron, or more and more usage of energy from the grid is what would be required. And then also looking at such areas where we will have to use molecule, or we will have to use, we can't totally go on the grid. There, what could be the sources where cleaner forms, or how to get those cleaner forms in there. Now, if you look at the total energy, so 60% is coming from coal. So because industry is also using a lot of coal directly, while grid is using a lot of coal, but then industry is also using a lot of coal directly. 11% is coming from diesel, and 6.5% from natural gas, and LPG and petrol about 5% each. So which means that our coal dependence is large. And can we shift from that coal dependence to renewable very fast? It will take time, but then can we also have cleaner forms of coal? So that's another major question which we are thinking, at least in the short run. Carbon capture is one, but coal gasification, and with coal gasification, carbon capture, we've been talking about it quite a lot, but then now probably time has come. So while energy transition in the long run has to be renewables all the way, but then in the medium term, the transition fuels, natural gas, and some cleaner forms of coal, that is something which would be unavoidable for us, considering the fact that our energy requirement is going to keep growing, and considering the fact that there are some resources which we have in the country which would work cheaper for us and would also provide the required energy security. Now, let us look at the various sectors which consume energy. So from the supply side, let us move to the demand side. So on the demand side, now 56% industry is consuming. So this is again slightly surprising, because we thought it was around 40-something%, but the statistics which Power Ministry has brought out recently says 56%. And in the last 1 year, the growth of grid energy power from the grid has been very phenomenal, and it's been more than 10.5%. Earlier, it used to be just around 3 to 4%. And most of this has happened because there's been a much higher demand from the industry. After industry, then transport is about 19%, agriculture is about 18%, and the household and various other sectors. So, so when we look at energy transition, the two difficult sectors which one sees are, one is the transport sector, where currently renewable energy world over is less than 4%. It's 3 or 4%. And there the alternatives also seem limited, at least on the two-wheeler, four-wheeler, one can see electric coming in a big way, but as far as transportation of goods is concerned, electric doesn't seem to be the right solution, because then the battery size becomes too large. So, and hydrogen, very promising, but still taking too much time. The cost has not come down to the level which we thought it would, but then at least on the face of it, it looks very promising. So we have to wait till the cost of hydrogen or green hydrogen comes down to a level where we can use it for heavy transport. The other difficult sector, of course, is industries. Some of the industries which need probably very high temperatures and largely dependent on coal. So biomass is one alternative. Hydrogen, if it comes in, then could be the other alternative. But right now, dependence on coal, at least say steel, cement, and certain other industries, one doesn't see very good alternatives emerging, but then something will have to come out. And then let me also talk a little bit about cooking, because household sector, at least in India, large number of homes, we managed to shift at least from untreated biomass to LPG. And currently we have 32 crore LPG connections. Probably no other country has that large a number. And again, but more than 50% of our LPG is also imported. So we can't depend on LPG for a very long time. So what are the alternatives for households or for cooking? So a shift to electricity would be a good thing, but then probably it's been a little difficult. Uh, Households, the cooking habits and all probably have not been conducive, and that shift has not happened, though from time to time government has been trying. Solar directly to be used for cooking, again we've been trying. Then still some people use biomass, so better stoves and more efficient means, again not very great success. But then biogas is one answer. And while we've done on a decentralized scale, we've been trying to push it for long time, not very great success. Now we are trying to push it on a larger scale with slightly bigger size plants. And here we should see some success, though the target is to set up 5,000 compressed biogas plants, but we've currently we have around 60 which are commissioned. But then large number of letter of intents have been given, more than 3,000. So there are some issues around it, but then hope these issues get sorted out. So then biogas could be another answer. While talking of biogas, there are other forms of biofuel. So India has been laying a lot of emphasis on ethanol, and the success has also been very good. Our blending is over 11% now, and we will reach 20% before time. 2025 is the year which Prime Minister has announced, but I think we'll be able to do it before that. So various alternatives are available to us. Greening of the grid with solar and wind, probably we have to move much faster than what we are doing now. We will have to do at least, say, 40 to 50 gigawatts every year in order to reach that 500 gigawatts non-fossil fuel target by 2030, which the PM has announced. But that seems still a little bit easier compared to how to tackle the transport sector and industry, which is dependent on coal to a large extent. So with this, I will end my talk, and again, thank all of you.
Thank you very much. Stress on affordability, who controls the energy source, the need for growth in this developing world especially, and the concern about imports, of course, that related to who controls it, and straightening out many issues regarding sectoral aspects. Now I request Dr. Kirit Parikh.
Arun Kapoorji, Mr. Kwame, Dr. Jyoti Parikh, and friends. I'm here to thank the speakers for the contributions. And I know Dr. Shri Tarun Kapoor has to leave at 12 o'clock, but before we release him, I want him to perform one more function. You know, we have seen how complicated the energy transition and its challenges, and as Jyoti had identified, covers many dimensions, not just economic, but also social and other things, and finance and so on. So I think many dimensions of sustainable development were identified in the talks today. And I think Professor Jyoti Parikh has been explored many of these over the years. And not only that, she has inspired many of our students and colleagues to work on some aspects or other of what we call the axis of sustainability or sustainable development. So the students and colleagues have contributed to a festship in honor of Jyoti Parikh for her 80th birthday. And I would request Shri Tarun Kapoorji to release this festship.
I thank all my colleagues and my PhD and master students at Indira Gandhi Institute of Development Research and my colleagues at IRADE who have written this, and all the people who have written these. I have written joint papers with them. They have been close colleagues, and I'm glad that decades of contacts with them has resulted in such a book. And it's very moving and close to my heart. This is a very big gift. Thank you so much.
May I request Mrs. Jyoti Parekh to please present the bouquet of flowers to Mr. Augustano? Yes. Mr. Augustano. And may I request Mr. Kirit Parekh to please present the bouquet of flowers to Mr. Tarun Kapoor?